Well, technical difficulties. I think we're got
Yeah.
them resolved.
No, it's all good. It
Yeah.
happens. It happens with
Yes.
technology. All right. So no echoes now. No echoes. No, my
No.
voice is not in the background anymore. All right.
Well,
So let's see. We're gonna go
let's see.
here.
I've got a washing machine running in the background. I can
Oh,
close the door on that. Do
okay.
you
Yeah.
hear it? Do you hear anything?
I don't. I don't hear anything. But
Okay.
if you hear it, I don't want it to be a distraction or anything.
No, it won't distract me.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go here. Take your mind into the wonderful world of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kinetic Hour. Conversations with you and guests. With your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Kinetic Hour. I am your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. Welcome one, welcome all to another edition as we are streaming live as usual, streaming live on Facebook, streaming live on Instagram, and streaming live on LinkedIn. So, welcome to all three platforms. As always, go to my YouTube channels and my Rumble channel to subscribe. Hit subscribe, click thumbs up, click the notifications, leave your comments, tell everyone that you know to leave comments and leave comments regarding the comments. As always, it's the Kinetic Hour, and that's Kinetic, Kennetic, the Kinetic Hour. And also go to my other YouTube channel, which is Kinetic Fit and Wellness Info, Kinetic Fit and Wellness Info for everything physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and everything that goes along with it. So thank you to everyone tuning in. I know that there's thousands of podcasts that you can be listening to. So thank you for always tuning in to the Kinetic Hour, whether it's one person listening or 1,000 people listening. My voice will continue to permeate. So thank you for tuning in. My guest this week, and I'm glad that he's here. Just let me read this real quick because this is great. He's a doctor of education in social psychology, a career educator as a teacher, principal, superintendent, and university professor. He's a military veteran with 3 years in the 82nd Airborne Division. He was the external evaluator for the character education grants for the state of Georgia and West Virginia's Department of Education. He's also a researcher and co-author of the book Enhancing a High Performance School Culture and Climate, New Insights for Improving Schools. He says his greatest interest is school climate and culture and their effect on student achievement. So let's welcome to the Kinetic Hour, Dr. Cletus R. Bulach. Dr.
Well,
Bulach.
that's quite an introduction. Yeah, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you for joining me on the Kinetic Hours. Greatly
It's a pleasure to be
appreciated.
on your show.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the extra time here as we had a little technical difficulty. So we're all good now. And so thank you. Um, First, I want to go, and I'm glad you sent me the chapter that you sent me on what we're going to discuss here today. Um, it was very informative. I read all 28 pages, and I even learned a few things. So I want to go deep diving into that. But first, let's talk about how you got started and how what led you down this path into the education system, um, and what made you decide that you wanted to go into the education system as a career?
Well, I started out to be a meteorologist. I was a meteorologist in the military and hoped to have a career in meteorology, but I didn't have the math or the chemistry background. So my first A was in history and German. And I ended up being in the history German teachers because I was successful in that area. And as I progressed in my career, I got interested in leadership and human relations, and I got a doctorate in social psychology, which is the study of how individuals behave in groups and the impact of the group on individuals. And that evolved into my doctorate degree on levels of openness, trust, and risk taking, which is what leaders do. You have to be open to the leader, you have to trust the leader, and you have to take the risk to follow the leader. Well, that led to all of my research on why do people behave the way they do. And I eventually came up with the 5 basic needs of people. And that led to the 9 ways a leader controls or motivates subordinates. That translates into a school, which is what school leaders do, the principals and the superintendents, in which I was part of. So the whole thing around what makes a high performing school is human relations. If the kids don't like the teacher, they aren't going to learn. If the superintendent doesn't like the teacher, and vice versa, it's all human relations. And well, how do you improve human relations? You have to focus on the needs of the students and the needs of the teachers. And the way you control and motivate them will determine whether it's successful or not. And that's basically where we are. And where would you like to go with this? We can focus on the needs. We can focus on openness and trust. We can focus on the forms of power. What interests you?
Well, actually, I want to go into all of them as time permits, um, because you mentioned about servant leadership.
Yes.
So, how do you define that? What is servant leadership?
Well, there are all kinds of leadership. For example, transformational leadership, you transform the school or the organization or whatever. So change is the big factor there. Then there's transactional leadership, which Trump is famous for, the art of the deal.
Right.
Everything with Trump is a transaction. This thing he's got going now with Panama and Greenland, that's a transaction that he is trying to accomplish. And then he's got the thing going with Mexico and Canada. Everything with Trump is a transaction. The tariff deal is a transaction. Now, a servant leader is a little different. Now, Trump is also a servant leader because he wants to make America great again. And in that process, he has to act as the servant to help make America great again. He is part of that. He is serving the country, supposedly, and the people, supposedly.
Okay.
A servant leader is there to serve others. Most leaders, for example, a directive leader is there to serve self. So we have many self-serving leaders. I would put Biden in that category. I would put Obama in that category. They have served self. They've made themselves wealthy. They've done well. And many of the politicians are self-serving. Now, a servant leader is there to serve. It's part of the Bible. The Bible says you must serve to serve self. You must serve the Lord and you must serve your fellow man. And that's what the Bible says. So a servant leader, and many leaders will say they're servant leaders, but in fact, they're self-serving. Anyway, the 9 forms of power are very interesting because 5 of those forms of power are used by a servant leader and the 4 controlling forms are used by a self-serving leader. A servant leader always uses the freeing forms of power to give the people who are their subordinates the choice to do what the leader wants. He empowers the subordinates. And when things don't go the way they're supposed to go, the leader takes control back. It's like a parent. A parent, all of your parents out there who are listening to your show, you've got your kids. Now you want them to grow up and be responsible. If you control them all of their lives and you turn them loose, they don't know what to do. So you have to give them responsibility. You have to give them things to do. You have to encourage them. You have to motivate them. Well, you do that with the 5 freeing forms of power. And when they don't do what they're supposed to do, you have to take control back. You can walk into Walmart any day and find out the parents who are not controlling their kids.
That's right.
They're giving them control and they don't take it back when they don't do what they're supposed to do. Any leader of any organization, whether it's a school, a parent, a family, or whatever, you give control to the people. But if they don't do what they're supposed to do, you as the leader have to take it back.
Right.
And that's what parents are supposed to do. So you want to go into the 5 ways parents can give control to their kids. The way a leader can give control to everybody. And then how do you take it back? That might be what's most interesting for your show and what can be done in the next hour.
Yeah, and I did read up on the freeing aspect and the controlling aspect, which I'm going to put up on the screen in just a minute, and we can go over all of them because I think all of them are interesting ideologies on how we can be better leaders.
Yeah.
You mentioned the current administration, and I just have a quick question about the current Department of Education. Do you believe that the federal government should abolish the Department of Education, or should it be left to the states to implement their own education system? And can they implement the 9 ways of leadership? In can they apply the 9 ways of leadership within the Department of Education as it stands right now?
No.
Okay.
The Department of Education needs to be abolished.
Okay.
As a school superintendent and an educator for 30 years, the Department of Education has done more damage to education in the states and in the individual schools than any other thing. They think they're doing what's right when in fact all they're doing is hurting what we are doing down at the bottom at the roots level. The only thing that they have done, in my opinion, is the Title IX reading program. That has been good. But this thing with the Title IX, when they changed the rules and made us include girls and boys in the same PE programs, girls and boys in the same health program, and then right now they are making it legitimate for transgender to go into girls' bathrooms and sports, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. They're mandating rules that are hurting us people down here at the bottom.
Yeah.
So yes, Trump's idea of abolishing the Department of Education and giving control back to each state is the only way to go, because the people in Ohio, where I was school superintendent, a teacher and principal for 30 years, we know what's best in Ohio for our kids. And not only that, if we give it to each individual state, right now, the way things are now, education in the United States, we compete with the other countries and we rank at the bottom. If you take it and give it back to the states, Ohio is going to be competing with Indiana and Michigan. You know how we hate Michigan from Ohio? We are going to do our damnedest to beat Michigan's test scores.
Okay.
So you put the competition down at the level where you can really compete. Right now, every state in the United States competes against a country.
Right. That's
And,
right.
Ohio is like the country of Germany, maybe China. So we're competing. All of our states are competing against a country, and it's not right.
Mm.
So give the power back to the states. And if the superintendents and the state departments become servant leaders where they give control back down the line. The other thing is, in the state of Ohio, when I was superintendent, I would be controlled by the State Department of Education. I didn't have a lot of control. And then I controlled the teachers, and then I controlled the principals, and it goes on down the line. The more you try to control people, they rebel because people want control. It's one of life's 5 basic needs. Control is a basic need.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have control of your life as a kid. You have to have the feeling that you have some control. If your parents don't give you any control, how am I going to grow up to be responsible? How am I going to grow up to make decisions? So it starts at the ground level with the kids.
Mm.
And in a school system, a kid walks into the classroom, he's given the rules, has no control. He must obey the rules. The teachers are given the rules. They have to follow the directives. It's all about control, all the way up the system. Now, if you take that around and give back control, Trump's given back control to the states, okay? If they give it back to the states, to the state departments, and the state departments of education give control back to the administration and give control back to the teachers, and the teachers give back control to the kids. That's my book. How do you give control to the kids without giving it up? How do you give control to the teachers without giving it up? It's very simple, really.
Mm.
I went to the teachers when I was a school superintendent, and I says, "What do you guys expect of me as your leader? Here's some 3x5 cards. I want you to write one expectation on each card." So I'm giving control to the
Right.
teachers. What do you want me to do? So I get all their expectations and I put them on a list, and at the next meeting I say, "This is what you guys expect of me. I can do almost everything you expect, but here's 2 things I can't do." And I tell them what I can't do because the State Department may have some rules that I have to follow.
Right.
But the State Department, well, then to go to the teachers, and the teachers go to the kids and say, "Look, guys, I'm your teacher. I want to know what you expect of me as your teacher." And they look at me like, "Are you crazy? You want us to tell you what we expect?" "Yeah, I want to know what you expect of me as your teacher."
Yeah.
Because, out there in that classroom, you've got blacks, you've got whites, you've got Latinos, you've got Orientals, you got this rich kids, you've got the poor kid, you've got a mix out there that's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And as a given teacher, I might have 150 kids during a day. I want to know what they expect of me. So they write what they expect of me on a card, and I get it, and I go back to them. I say, "This is what you guys expect of me. I'm going to try to do what you want me to do. Here are a couple of things I can't do."
Mm-hmm.
Then
Mm-hmm.
I go to the teachers and I say, "I want to know what you think the rules ought to be in this classroom." The teachers do to the kids, and they give me the rules that they think they want. And everything that they want is usually what I want. I want them to sit down. I want them to study. I want them to pay attention, and on with the rules.
Mm-hmm.
They usually have one rule that they don't put in there, and that's turning your homework on time. I just put it in, and they don't know that I put it in.
Right.
So up on the list goes 10 or 12 rules. I usually focus on 10, the 10 most frequent rules that they mention when they turn them in. And when the rules go up, every kid out there looks up there and says, "Oh my God, there's my rule. That's my rule. Those are my rules."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm serving them,
Yeah.
but they're serving me.
Yeah.
So that's what a leader does. You create an environment where you put the people below you, you give them control.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5 freeing forms of power is how you give them control. Where do you want to go with this, Ken? I don't want to get on my soapbox.
No, 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 no. You're good. This is good because I'm learning and I'm here to listen.
Well,
Um,
as a parent, if I were a parent starting over with my 5 kids, I would say to my kids, "Look, guys, what do you think the rules ought to be in this house?
uh-huh.
I'm going to give you 5 cards. I want you to put one rule on each card." And the parent finds out what they think the kid thinks the rules ought to be. And many times the rules are the exact same rules. The one they probably aren't going to put in is be home on time after curfew.
Right.
Well, you just put that one in, and they won't know. They'll
Yeah.
think, well, one of the kids put that in. Who's the dumb idiot that put that rule in? So,
Right.
but so now one of the forms of power is moral power. Moral power. Once you put moral power into place, and kids don't do what they're supposed to do, your kids or employees, like here's a typical one. When I was a school principal, teachers don't show up on time. Didn't clock in on time. And I say, "Hey, you didn't clock in on time." And they say, "Oh, well, you don't know what happened on the way to." I says, "It's 7 o'clock. You need to talk in 7 o'clock. That's the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what you're supposed to do now?"
Yep.
"Yes."
Yep.
"Wow, I hear what you're saying." So you just tell them the moral power is once people know what the right thing is to do, they will do it. All you got to do is remind them what's the right thing to do here. That's moral power. So
Okay. And moral power, that was part of the freeing,
yes,
one of the 5 freeing ones.
right,
And I see so many, well, I'm here in California, and we've had teacher strikes, and the teachers complain about what either the superintendents aren't doing, or they don't have enough extra staffing, or they don't have enough supplies for their students. We've even heard about some teachers coming out of their own salaries to purchase
right. They
certain
do. My
supplies
daughter does that all the time.
for their students.
Yeah,
Um, so is that a result of the federal aspect of how the Department of Education is operating? Is that what that is? Because I see it all the time. At least every 2 to 3 years, we're hearing about teachers or teachers unions going on strike, and it's always for the same the same it's always for the same subject matters, either short staffing or short on supplies, or they don't have enough control, like you've been mentioning.
right.
Um,
Um, well, the more you try to control people, the more they rebel.
right.
I mean, it's just a normal human. It's a normal human trait.
Yeah.
They control you. Probably um, the most important thing we can share here today, Ken, is what are people's 5 basic needs? Because if the needs are met,
Mm-hmm.
they will be productive.
Right.
If they're not met, you got problems.
Right.
So we'll
Right.
start. We'll
And
start with.
so let me put this up
Go
on
ahead.
the screen. So and we'll start with, let me pull this up here because you sent me this specific chapter here and I thought it was great. Um, and so right here, as you see up on the screen for everyone, so these are the freeing forms of power. There are 5 freeing forms of power. You have
Right.
information, expertise, personality, ego, and what you just mentioned just a minute ago, moral power. So when I read the first two, about information and expertise, I thought those two were great, and I'm glad you started with those two. Why is information power so important, and why is expertise power so important?
Well, information is what happens right now. You give information and people say, wow, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I really like that. And when you, as a teacher, and on the everything is about today information, it is probably the one form of power that you can never run out of. It's
Mm,
always there. And when people get it, the information, they will either accept it or reject it.
right.
And some information is rejected. When people demonstrate their expertise, through expertise, they're getting information by demonstration. And in many cases, the leader doesn't have the expertise they want to share, so they send their employees someplace where they can see that being done. Expertise is the demonstration of information. And when people see it, they say, well, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can do that. I see how you did it.
Mm-hmm.
And and if they watch somebody else do it because the leader doesn't have that expertise, they learn that way. Now, personality, when I do my workshops on this, I say, which form of power do you think is the most important? And they say, personality.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because if they like you, all you got to do is ask.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, sure, I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that. If they don't like you, they say, well, screw you.
Yep.
You can get somebody else to do that. I don't
That's
give a
right.
damn what you think.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. That's
So
right.
that's your personality as a leader, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Your personality is your most important form of power. If you
Yes.
if people like you, they will do it for that reason only because they like you.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't require anything. No effort, no nothing. Information you have to get the information and you have to share it. Expertise, you have to demonstrate it. Personality, you just ask.
Yeah.
Now, ego is the crazy one. I never had this when I came up with this. When I came up with this forms of power, I never thought of ego. But one day I said, anybody else can think of another form of, and some coach says, Cleet, you don't have ego power. I says, what's that? He says, I'm a coach. I get people to do things by stroking their egos. I said, oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. You're right.
Yeah.
He says, and not only that, he says, there's a negative ego stroke that I use that's even better. I says, what? He says, yeah. I tell him, we're going up against this team and they're tough. I don't know whether you guys can beat them. He says they puff up their chest and they go out of here and they go dynamite against them and they beat them. That's negative ego. I says, yeah, you're right. That's tough. And as I did my work on this, I came across my example in my book, and it's Muhammad Ali.
I was going to mention that because I
You
read
read
that.
you
Yeah.
read that.
I was going to mention that because you mentioned about when I read the part about personality, and it was before I even read about Muhammad Ali. When I saw about personality and read it, the first name that popped up into my brain was Muhammad Ali because he had personality. He had a personality that just it just took over his presence.
You're right.
But then when I got down to the ego and started reading about that, and then you mentioned Muhammad Ali, then I was like, oh, yeah, I guess he did have an ego, you know? And then you mentioned about how he developed that ego after his 1960 Olympic gold medal win. And he started developing this ego about himself. I am the greatest, you
Yes.
know? Talk
Sting like
about
a
that a little
butterfly,
more.
flight like a bee, sting like a
Right.
bee, float
Oh,
like a
like a
bird.
butterfly, sting like
Yeah.
a bee. That's right.
Yeah,
Um,
his teacher, when he was in school, told him, "You will never amount to anything."
mm,
And when he got that gold glove, he went back to that same teacher and says, "Look what I got. You
right.
told me I wouldn't amount to anything."
Yes.
And the negative ego stroke, if done on the right person, is dynamite because they will do anything to prove you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If it's done on the wrong person, they will say, "Yeah, you're right. I can't do that." So
Right.
you have to know who you use it with.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
um, anyway,
And then you have the moral power,
that's
which you mentioned earlier. Can you go a little deeper with that?
well, it's the best form of power. It's the best form of power. It costs nothing. All you have to do is get people to agree what the rules are. Once you do that, and they all agree that what the rules are, you can imagine what would have happened if Trump and the latest fiasco when Zelensky and Vance had that fiasco about talking about peace in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
If they hadn't known what the rules were, that would never have happened
Mm.
because they would have done the right thing. But anyway, um,
Mm-hmm.
moral
Mm-hmm.
power, and if you look at the Bible lays out what the rules are. The book of Proverbs lists what common sense says people should do. Those are the rules. But in any organization, there is a handbook. But most people don't know what the rules in that handbook are. So, well, as a teacher in a classroom, I asked the kids, "What do you think the rules ought to be?" When the rules went up, they were our rules. When a parent goes to the kids and says, "What do you think the rules ought to be in our house?" and you get everybody to agree on the rules and that go up on the refrigerator or whatever wall, and curfew is 11 o'clock. When the kid doesn't come in at 11 o'clock, you say, "Son or daughter, curfew was 11 o'clock and you didn't come in till 11:30." "Oh yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
know, Dad." And sometimes that's all it takes, just to
Mm-hmm.
remind kids what the rules are.
Yeah.
I do. There's another rule on conflict management. When people don't do what they're supposed to do, and you confront them with the rule, and they say, "Oh, but Dad, you don't know what happened on the way home, son. Curfews at 11 o'clock. But Dad, son, curfews at 11. It's the broken record.
Yeah.
I call
Yeah.
it the broken record. When people don't do what they're supposed to do, don't argue with them about their excuses. Just say, I broken record it. The
Mm-hmm.
rule is, but you don't, the rule is,
Yeah.
but you don't, the rule is, you don't get into it with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as a leader, you don't give up control.
Right.
Once the rule has been established, you as the leader have to enforce it, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a principal, or the President of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot give up control. The leader has to give control. That's what servant leaders do. The 5 forms of power, the rules are established as a group, not just top down.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules are enforced. And when the rules are broken, The leader uses the 4 controlling forms of power to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
When I say, son, curfew's at 11 o'clock, that's the rule. It's position power. I am your father. I am the principal. It's position power. I'm reminding you of the rules. I
Right.
expect you to abide by them. So I take control back. Now, if they don't do that because I remind them, I have my other 2 forms of power. One is reward power and control power. And I
Mm-hmm.
say to them, look, do you want to be able to go to um, the movies with your girlfriend next weekend? Well, yeah. Well, what do you think I ought to do about this curfew that you're breaking? Dad, don't worry. I will abide by it the next time.
All right.
Okay, son, then you can go with your girlfriend to the movies next week, and I expect you to abide by the curfew. Do we have a deal? Yes, Dad. Okay. So I use reward power to get people to do what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't do it, then I have position, um, I have the ability to punish. So I say,
Mm-hmm.
well, look, if you're not going to come in on curfew, I'm going to have to cut some of your um, options. For example, you can only go out one night a week. If you're not going to abide by curfew, you're limited to one night a week. Can we agree on it? No, Dad, you don't have to do that. I'll abide by it. Okay, but I just want you to know that if you don't follow the rules here, then I'm going to have to punish you. Now, principals do that all the time. Parents do that all the time. And if you don't abide by the rules when you're driving down the road, you get punished. So coercion power is the third form of controlling forms of power. You got position, reward, and coercion. Okay, those are the 3 controlling forms of power. Every parent has that right. Now, teachers have that right when they get hired. They get position power. With position power, they get reward and coercion power. Now, what happens if you lose your position power? You lose reward and coercion power.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what causes you to lose your position power? It's the 4th form of power, and it is powerful. Do you remember what it was?
Well, I got here on the screen. You have connection.
Oh, yeah, it's connected. Well, Trump has connection power with his MAGA movement.
Okay.
He's connected he got all the votes. So he has connection power. Biden lost connection power. And when you lose connection power, you lose your position. When you lose your position, you lose the ability to give rewards and coercion.
Right.
So position power is critical. Now we're talking out here. I'm sure we got a lot of parents listening to this.
Yeah.
You got kids. You got the forms of power here now. You can give the freeing forms of power, use them with your kids, give them control, let them assume responsibility when they're supposed to, and so forth. And when they don't, you've got to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, connection power is critical. Let's suppose your wife doesn't like what one of the kids did, and she says, well, you just wait till your dad comes home. I'm going to tell him what you did. So you go to dad. The wife goes to dad, says, you know what so-and-so did today? He did this, this, and that. And dad says, oh my God, I did that when I was a kid. You did? Yeah, I don't think it's such a big deal. I don't think we ought to worry about this. Well, I think we ought to, the wife says. No, I won't just let it slide. What happens to the wife's position power? It's gone.
Yeah.
The same thing happens to teachers time after time after time when the superintendent and the principals don't back their teachers over a discipline problem, and that happens too much. And then they want to know why the teacher does not have control in the classroom. Well, if you don't give her the power, that when you don't back her when she asked you for help, you cut her legs right out from under her, or his right out from under her.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I got it on my soapbox there a little bit.
No. This is good because there is there does seem to be a disconnect between the teacher student relationship, which is why, as you mentioned, there's dropouts and poor grading with students, because there's no real relation. You mentioned about the caring aspect,
Right.
about the teachers truly caring, having a caring aspect for their students, especially in the public school system. When you have in the elementary school system, you have 30, 40 plus children. But then when you get to the middle, junior high or high school level, now, like you mentioned earlier, you have maybe 150 to 250 children that you see every single day. Different personalities coming from different backgrounds,
Right.
different household upbringings, different cultural aspects of how they grow up, which might not parallel with the school system at all. So you have all these different dynamics
You're right.
of what of how leadership may be lacking with between teacher and student, or in the household, how the relationship may be lacking between parent and child. So these with these freeing and controlling aspects of leadership, um, you've come to the conclusion that we can make a better relationship or create a better relationship by implementing some, if not all, of these dynamics of control.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just crazy. And you mentioned caring. you know, I belong to an organization called the Moral Enlightenment. They have a conference in Finland next July 25th, and I've been invited to present a paper there on the importance of caring behaviors on in life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stop to think about it, caring, knowing that people care about you, may be the most important thing in a person's life. Here are I'm going to run by real quick
Yeah, go ahead.
5 things that people need in life to be successful.
Okay.
First of all, you have to have some feeling of safety. So if you're afraid of your life, somebody's going to kill you, or if you're being bullied in your office or wherever, your anxiety levels, your stress and anxiety and fear, that is need number one. And if you go back to the philosophers of the 18th century, they identified that need as an important need. The next guy came along and said, well, happiness is a need. You have to be, if there's no happiness in your life, it's no good. And that was the second need the 18th century philosophers identified. And then that came out, and Nietzsche, who is an 18th century philosopher, very famous one, Nietzsche, Nietszhe, I believe.
Okay.
He says, yeah, that's right. Happiness and fear, anxiety and life itself, that's right. But there's another one, and it's all about power. He says, power. People want power. Well, power means control. If you have power, the 9 forms of power, you have control. And that gives you control. He says that's the most important need. Well, a little bit later, Rick Warren comes along and he reads about the purpose driven life, and purpose is a fourth need. And then you look at all the stuff on nurture and caring about how important that is, and that's the fifth need. Well, caring, if you've got control, you're happy, you are successful, you got everything you want, and you wake up one morning and realize nobody gives a damn about you. Nobody cares about you. What is all that other stuff worth?
Mm.
I mean, look at what Biden has tried to do with his life. The most important thing he wants in life is his legacy. He wants people to know. He wants people to care about what he did. That's his most important need. And for many people, caring is their most important need. If you wake up one morning and realize nobody cares about you, it's an awful, awful feeling.
Mm. Right.
No matter how good you are or what you've accomplished, if nobody cares about you, you look at all the movie stars who have committed suicide. Michael
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, Elvis, um, it just goes on and
Yeah.
on.
Oh
They've
yeah.
got everything. They've got everything. And they kill them and they die, kill themselves.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I got on my soapbox. I don't know where you want to go with it.
No, no, no. This is all good. You
Uh,
mentioned you
well,
mentioned
parents need to think about their kids' basic needs. Your wife's 5 basic needs. If your wife is listening, what about your husband? I used to tell I used to tell people, my kids and my graduate students, I'd say, here's the secret to a successful marriage. They say, what? What do you mean? I says, well, there's one thing you got to remember. You go up to your spouse, whether you're male or female, you go up to your spouse and you say, look, the secret to a successful marriage is this. One of us has to be in control of the marriage. And they have to make sure that the other person gets what they want. Now, who's in control?
mm,
It's a shared thing,
right.
because if I'm the boss, I'm the husband, and I'm the boss, and she gets what she wants, then I have whatever I do has to be to make her happy, because I care about her, I care about this marriage, and I want it to work. If she's in control, then she has to make sure that I get what I want. So that's what makes a marriage successful.
So it's control, like you said, control without losing control.
Right, right,
Control without losing control, or
right,
giving, or being willing to give a certain amount of control without losing control of your own personal views or your own personal aspects of life, or
right,
the marriage, or whatever your endeavors are in life. Because obviously, in a marriage or any type of relationship, there has to be a level of respect on both sides in a relationship,
right,
to where both can kind of coexist with each other.
right,
And if there is uh, conflict for whatever reason, uh, we can we can come together and formulate a solution based on our based on the agreement of what level of control that we have.
right.
Okay.
So, if the people below you know that they can get what they want in this relationship with you, that's what you're there for. You're the boss, but you get what you want, and I'm here to help you get what you want. Then it's a compatible relationship, because I know that I can get he is there or she is there to help me get what I want. So all I have to do is share with them what I want, and they will help me to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cooperation. The biggest problem with our schools is it's a highly competitive environment. Who gets the A's? Who is the salutatorian? Who's the valedictorian? Who's the captain of the football team? Who wins? Who loses? In
Right.
the classroom, who's the teacher's pet? It's
Mm-hmm.
so competitive that it's not a cooperative environment. Now, when I write this book on how to create a high performing school, that whole environment changes, because you create a cooperative environment where teachers give control to the students, and teachers control and students control themselves. You give them control. You know what the rules are. Now they're going to follow. When one kid doesn't follow the rules, the other kid says, "Hey, hey, hey, see the rule. You're not doing it."
Right.
The kids start controlling each other because you create an environment of togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
We are in this together. When I say to the kids, I want to know what you expect. I want to know what you think the rules are. It's we. We are in this together. It's not me, just me controlling you. We are in this together.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
same is true with parents. If you have a family that's in it together, then it's not dad having to control the kids. They will control each other.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on my soapbox.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned bullying earlier,
Yeah.
because there are people that tend to, um, well, not only childhood bullying, but bullying as adults as well, because
Oh, yeah.
you do have people that tend to
Right.
use power and control to their advantage, and they start to abuse their power, which you mentioned a little further down the chapter that you sent me about how power and control are misused. And with bullying, as far as students are concerned, we see it more and more and more in the news about students being bullied or students committing suicide because of bullying. Um, where does the behavior come from first, and then how can the concept of bullying be remedied, not only for to have the student have a better, not only for the student um, to have a better experience in school, but so they can also know that, again, someone actually cares, because bullying is a big issue for children, and then you do have adults that also do bullying. So how
Yeah.
do you kind of distinguish the two?
Well, that's a good one. I've got an article published in a parent magazine about what parents can do with bullying. Um, Here's the thought on what makes a bully. Okay.
Okay.
If parents over control their kids, that kid needs to get control back. You cannot live your life being controlled, because if you are totally controlled, any human being out there totally controlled has to find a way to get control back. You just have to. You must have control of your life in some way. You can't stand it.
Hmm.
If you don't have control, your options are join a gang.
Right.
You get control with a gang. You can drink alcohol, drugs.
Hmm.
You can commit suicide. Believe it or not,
That is an option.
suicide is taking control of your life.
Yeah.
You're
Oh yeah.
ending it. I'm
Yeah.
tired of this. I can't stand it anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, you can be that, but you can become a bully too. People who are over controlled at home are more likely to become bullies at school.
Right. Yeah.
If parents give their kids control, they don't have control issues, and they don't have to become a bully at school to get control back. Now, the worst bully gets a gun.
Mm. Yeah. The school
When
shootings.
I have my hand on that gun and that pistol, that trigger, I have control. I'll
Yeah.
show those bastards. They ain't going to control me anymore.
Mm. Hmm.
Many people who are shooters are victims of bullying, and they go back. That kid cannot, most kids will snap at bullying.
Yep.
And parents who have kids who've got A stomach ache before going into school is the first tip off. I don't want to go to school. I'm sick. The first tip off that their kid is being bullied.
Mm, okay.
Um, I had a parent in my community here who says, I don't know what I'm going to do, Clete. Uh, uh, my, I'm new to the neighborhood, and my kid is new in the school, and she's being bullied. What am I going to do? I says, well, I tell you what, invite her, tell her to invite her friends home to a party at your school, at your
Okay.
house. Invite your friends to have a party at your house, and you find out who her friends are. And she'll make friends, and if she's got friends, she won't be bullied. It's the kid at school who has no friends who's usually the victim of a bully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I remember when I was in elementary school, and we're talking about early '80s, um, and looking back on it now, it is what you just said. Because I was bullied in elementary school. It's amazing
okay.
how children behave when they're so young. You wouldn't think that the behavior would be so much that they have to take their aggressions out on other students. But now that I'm older and have progressed in life and have learned about psychology as well as you have, um, it does start in the home when the children are controlled so tightly that they don't have any outlet to speak about what they're feeling or or uh, anything that has to do with themselves expressing themselves about what they're feeling in the moment or what they're feeling about how the house dynamics are making them feel. um, and so when they go to school and they see the introvert that keeps to themselves, and so they want to go pick on that person, because it makes them feel powerful in that
Yes,
moment.
you're right.
In
You're
that moment.
absolutely right.
And so looking back now that I'm at this stage in life, I don't blame the children as much as the environment that created that behavior,
Right.
the environment. And so now, because I have a 10-year-old daughter, I allow her to express herself freely. you know, um, it just makes for a much better relationship between, and I'm just speaking specifically about the father daughter dynamic. Um, it makes for a better relationship between us to where the communication is open. She knows that I have a specific amount of control being the father, and I also allow her to have her control, being able to express to me what she's feeling versus immediately cutting her off because I'm the parent or because I'm the a quote authority figure
Now
in
you
her
just mentioned
in her life.
the
So
most important behavior that any leader can do or any parent can do. It's listening.
yes.
Listening is the most important behavior that you can do as a human being because when you listen to people, what do you convey? I care about you. I
Mm-hmm.
care what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who have worked for Trump says you'd be surprised how much that guy listens. He listens to you. That's probably one of his greatest attributes, but you would never know it. I
Right.
mean, you wouldn't know it
Yeah.
except that's what people have said who work for him.
Mm-hmm.
Listening. Now, here's a technique. There are 5 basic communication skills, and I don't go into that, but one of them is paraphrasing. Do you know what paraphrasing is?
Paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I know the meaning of the word and I've used it, but explain it to all of
When
us.
you listen to your daughter talk to you, do you ever paraphrase what she says? This is what I heard you say.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think
Yes.
this is what you said. you paraphrase what they said. So it gives you this is my understanding of what you're saying,
Correct.
and you paraphrase. You don't give back the same verbatim thing she said because you want to give your understanding of what you heard, not what she said, but what you understood.
Correct.
And you say, "Is that what you meant to say?" "No, Dad, that's not what I meant to say. This is what I meant to say."
Mm-hmm.
And she comes back at you with what she meant to say.
Right.
You say, "Oh, now I understand. You're saying."
Yeah. Now we have some clarity.
Right. So
Yeah.
paraphrasing is the most important communication skill that any human being has because it's a way of showing that you care. It's a
Mm-hmm.
way of listening.
It is, and I'm glad you mentioned that paraphrasing because again, creating or allowing the dialogue to occur. Um, Again, it just creates for an easier uh, relationship moving forward
Now,
from a parent dynamic.
yeah, just imagine what would have happened at that fiasco that happened between Vance and Trump and Zelensky. What if Vance had paraphrased Zelensky instead of saying, "Well, you don't care what the U.S. has done for you,"
Mm-hmm.
and he
Mm-hmm.
expressed his own frustration with what he thought he heard.
Yep.
When if he had paraphrased what Zelensky was saying, that whole fiasco may have been avoided,
Mm.
but he didn't.
And he didn't
He
do that.
expressed his feelings instead of paraphrasing what he thought Zelensky was saying. He could have said, "Well, Mr. Zelensky, are you really saying this? Is what I understand that you said?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Zelensky might have said, "Oh, no, that isn't what I meant."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
No, you're right. You're right.
miscommunication occurs too often when it should not have occurred.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the confusion could have been mitigated. I mean,
Yeah, and when I was an assistant principal, disciplining kids before you paddle them, I would say, "Well, give me your understanding of what you think I said." They said, "What?" I said, "What do you think I want you to do?" "Oh, well, I'm not sure." "Okay, well, let me tell you again. This is what I expect of you." You do it again. "Okay, now give me your understanding of what you think I want you to do." Parents, you need to use this with your kids. Don't berate your kids and tell them what you want them to do without checking to see if they understood what you want.
right.
Well, you ask them to give me your understanding of what I just said. It's a technique.
It is.
It's a beautiful technique
Yeah.
to use with your kids.
Yeah.
And if you're the leader out there, before you have an issue with an employee, that'd be the last thing I would say. Give me your understanding of what we just went over here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They may not they may not have heard a thing you say.
Ah, that's right.
You
That's
don't
right.
know. You don't
Go,
know.
go in one ear and out the other.
Right. You may have thought you were a great leader and you solved this thing, and you say, "Well, give me your understanding of what you think we just went over here."
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, what?"
Mm-hmm. That's right.
They may
That's
not
right.
have heard a thing you said.
That's right. Yeah, clarity is always
Yeah,
a great thing.
yeah,
Um, I have just a few more things here before we wrap up. You in your writing that you sent to me, there was something that you said about uh, doing things right versus doing the right thing.
yeah.
Can you explain that differentiation of doing the right thing versus doing things right?
Uh, well, when you do things what you think is right, it may not have been the right thing
Right.
because you really don't know if the person when they most people will try to do things right They will do it the way they think it ought to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But it may not be the right thing. And you really don't know
Yeah.
that until, well, that was what I meant was doing the right thing is moral power. That's the
Got it.
right thing.
Got it.
I used to get into we when I was a school superintendent, the board of education,
Yeah.
the 5 or 7 people out there, they would get to bickering and talking, and would just take up time. I finally put up a sign on the back wall. What is the right thing to do? That was a big sign on the back of the wall in our boardroom. And when they got to doing it, arguing amongst themselves, I would say, hey guys, wait a minute. Look at that sign back there. What's the right thing to do?
Mm.
That's all I ask you. That's all I'm asking you to do. What's the right thing to do here? Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And does that help you understand why?
Oh yeah.
Because they
Absolutely.
all thought they were doing the right thing. That's why they were arguing.
Yeah.
But they
Right.
didn't think about what was the right thing to do. It's what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Each person wanted. It wasn't the right thing to do. It's what they wanted. Right.
What they wanted, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a really kind of good, cool play on the wording aspect, because just rearranging those few words can create an entirely different definition
Right.
of each way of terminology of doing the right thing versus doing things right. So
Well,
I'm glad you made that.
it boils down to what is life all about? It's about wants and needs.
Hmm.
When a
Hmm.
young kid, they want this and they want that. And what do they need is another thing. What they want and what they need are two. Here, that's the same thing about what is right and what's the right thing. What's the right thing is what's needed. What's the
Right.
right thing often is what people want. And what
Right.
people want may not be what is needed.
Correct.
Uh,
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, the want versus the need.
right. And,
Got it.
growing up, what it makes the difference between successful people and losers is people who focus on wants and not needs.
Hmm.
Because if you focus on wants, you may never accomplish what's needed.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, if you
Yep.
focus on what's needed, when you come to my age in life, age 80, I can do whatever I want because I don't need anything anymore.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
whatever I want, I can afford to do.
Yeah. 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 The needs become very different
Right.
as we progress in life,
Right.
and the wants as well.
Yes.
The wants can change as well as we progress in life. So we have the freeing forms of power, which are information, expertise, personality, ego, and moral power. And then you have your controlling forms of power, which are connection, position, power, reward, and coercion. And I think all of these are great to develop a very specific type of leadership that can create success, not just in the school system, but in life. Period.
Right.
Whether it's in the school system, whether it's home life, parenting, your career endeavor. If you have one employee or 1,000 employees, you can develop to be that servant leader to where you serve and give the people what they need. And then the people can move forward and then they can get what they want later on. So all of it is in a perfect order, and I'm glad you created the distinctions between the two. Um, Dr. Bullock, I want to thank you for taking the time out to come on the Kinetic Hour and explain this with the school system. I think this is great. Tell the people how we can find you.
Oh, Well, there's a website they can look at all my stuff. There's publications there.
Okay.
There's a survey on bullying behavior there that any school system can use. There's a survey on how to measure levels of openness and trust between the leader and the group or within the group. There's lots of stuff that people can use. It's at www.westga.edu/, and that little tilt up in the left-hand corner of the keyboard,
Yeah.
and C Bulach, and anything on there is free. Um, and at my age, I don't charge for anything anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need any stipend or money. Anybody that wants my services can have it.
And real quick, you mentioned that you have something called PDAC, the Professional Development and Assessment Center. What is that specifically?
Oh, that was when I used to do seminars on human relations and leadership and so forth. I haven't done any of that in quite a while.
Okay. Okay.
Um, that's Professional Development Assessment Center. I used to do a lot of measuring of student behavior, character ed all across the United States, and bullying behavior. And I'm no longer active in that area, and I
Okay.
no longer want to get into that. But the surveys are still there. The character education, the character behavior survey measures, I think, 96 behaviors on 18 different character traits.
Mm-hmm.
And most schools in the United States have mandated character behavior education be taught in schools to improve the behavior of students. So if you want to measure the behavior of your students in terms of how they behave on character traits, you can use that survey.
Okay.
The schools
Okay.
can use that survey.
And I'll put up everything that you sent to me. Some of the things that you sent to me, I'll put up in post production as well. So when people see this on YouTube, they can go directly and see you, and they can get some of this great information as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If you'll give me the site, I'll post that on my Facebook and LinkedIn page.
Oh,
so
yeah.
People can watch your YouTube show. This is a YouTube show.
Yes. Yes.
I think I have probably 20 YouTube shows
Okay.
already, but this will be one of the longer ones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the more informative ones, because you're an interviewer. You've covered a lot of territory here.
Yeah, well, this is what I'd like to do, and the more information that we can get out to the general public, the more for people to consider. I mean, whether you implement it or not is totally up to the individual, but at
Right.
least the information is there for people to consider. And so that's what I bring to the table, information for people to at least consider. And this is a huge topic for me because, again, of all the happenings that have surrounded the Department of Education, for not even before the new Trump administration, but this has been going on for decades, uh, for of how the Department of Education has been operating here in the States, and how we are being compared to other countries when we should be trying to compare and get better with ourselves versus trying to compete with other countries.
Right.
So I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. Final question for you, and I always ask my guests this last question: what does life mean to you?
Well, it goes back to caring.
Okay.
I'm, I want people to care about me as a person. I want to be respected, and when I go out, and if I know that, and then I feel good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
If I know that people care about me as a person, that's probably the most important quality. that any human being out there, if, if you wake up, if nobody cares about you, what's life? What's left in life? There's nothing. There's nothing. Of course, if you have no purpose in life, you have nothing either. But if you have a purpose, that's one of the reasons people care about you, because they know that you are trying to do something with your life, and you're trying to make a difference in this world. You've got a purpose in life that's beyond yourself. If all of your life is serving yourself, I, there aren't gonna be many people that are gonna remember you.
You're going to be a lonely soul.
It will be good riddance.
Yeah.
When you die, it'll be, oh God, I'm glad he's gone.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think most people never want that feeling, because like you said, it doesn't feel good.
I guess that's the most important thing. I want people to care about what I have done and about me as a person.
Got it. And that's great. Everything goes back to the caring aspect.
Yeah, when I was a teacher, I wanted the kids to care about me as their teacher. When I was the principal, the same way. When I was superintendent, the same way. When I was a professor, the same way. You want people to care about you, and that's why you're there to serve. You're there to serve them. So
correct. The servant leader. The servant leader. Dr. Bulach, I want to thank you. His book he co-authored, and this is just one of your books here, but this is one that we've been talking about the most. It's called Enhancing a High Performance School Culture and Climate, New Insights for Improving Schools. And so, Dr. Bulach, I want to thank you for taking the time out to give us all this wonderful information. Come back, because, there's so many other things that could come forward with the school system, with whatever changes that take place over the next 4 years, or 2 years with the midterms, but over the next 4 years. And, we can go even more deep diving into the 9 forms of power and how we can use them to our advantage. So please come back at a later time, and we can discuss all of that.
As you feel a need for, as you interviewed various people and deal with topics, if you want to post hole on any of these topics, we can come back and do that. I'd be happy. You are enjoyable, very enjoyable to be on your show, because you ask such insightful questions, and normally I do all the talking, and I don't get the person doing the interview to interact as much as you have.
Well,
so
thank you.
I appreciate your interactions with I can see that you care.
Yes.
That makes me feel good.
Absolutely. So thank you for being my guest on the Kinetic Hour, and to everyone listening and watching. We want to thank Dr. Cletus R. Bulach for all of his wonderful information. As always, go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, click thumbs up, click all the notifications, leave your comments regarding this subject matter. What do you think should happen within the public school system? We'd love to hear your comments, and or even questions that I can possibly relay to Dr. Bulach for the next go round. So go to my YouTube channel, subscribe here on YouTube, and on my Rumble channel as well. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. As I always say, there's 1,000 podcasts that you can listen to. So thank you all for tuning in to the Kinetic Hour. And until next time.